If they were to be interested only in their own bottom lines and their top lines and their quarterly and monthly and daily, if they were to live entirely in that world and have no connection with what is happening around them, that would be a shame.
Right. Leena, your point.
Political leadership question, Anand. There were a couple of dimensions I wanted to bring in. One is when we were talking of leaders, all of us tended to give examples of CEOs. But to me, you know, a frontline salesman who's leading 25 people and influencing a sale on behalf of a company is doing a huge leadership role. Someone on the shop floor, a shift supervisor, handling 50, 100 people on the shop floor in the night shift is doing a great leadership role. So it's important to also keep that in mind, that it's not just about CEOs and the leadership we are building, but at every level there's need for leadership in different forms and different shapes, and are we really building that? The second dimension that I want to give is about leadership moments. It's not that we are all born to be these perfect leaders morning, evening, night, but they're crucial leadership moments at which time you have to really rise and be a leader. And there's maybe, and the moments like, the time that you have to tell say a high potential employee who's not performing, and you have to give the hard message saying you're not performing, you have to pull up your socks. It's a really crucial leadership moment because you have to leave the person feeling really motivated to wanting to step up his performance. A time that when you are stretching a person, when you're setting goals to stretch that person just enough so that the person doesn't break, but at the same time is really, really quite stretching. How do you handle that conversation? That's a leadership moment. So to me, it's a series of leadership moments, and those who are in leadership jobs, irrespective of whether they're in front line, whether they're CEOs, how they handle those special moments is really what's critical.
Great. Rajiv, you were going to make a point.
I agree with you because leadership is hierarchy neutral. Unfortunately, media and magazines, anybody who becomes a managing director, they think he's a leader. Expectation is to play leadership role. But in my work life, I have come across people who exercise leadership much below. And I think those are the kind of people who really need to be identified, acknowledged, take them through the separate route. I think this whole business of leadership has been romanticized beyond, I tell you once, recognition. In some ways, we are doing disservice to the whole business of leadership development. Leaders are born in adversity. Are we creating situations, the crucibles of leadership for our managers and leaders that go to that fireball? I don't think we are also certain degree of elitism is developed in leadership where people are sent to overseas posting, then they are giving this assignment, AMP in Harvard, here and leader is born. I think leadership to me is to really give certain walking on fire experience to people, different territories, different people. And I don't buy the argument that a leader must have exposure in all areas. There is no need that 10 functions leader should go. People are able to demonstrate their leadership qualities or skills in 2 functions and experiment with them. We have number of examples where people have gone to become great leaders from a single function, from 2 functions. So while it is necessary that generally one should understand business, I think we have to leave obsession with theoretical models of leadership development. It does no good. I have seen people going to 10 programs in Harvard, Wharton, all Ivy Leagues, and they return as illiterate as they were. So what is it? What is it? What is it in the leadership? I think organizations need to provide opportunities to people to prove themselves in tough situations, in adverse setting, and ensure how they reflect back, how they demonstrate their resilience in those situations to manage and be capable of running large organizations. I think demystifying a bit of elitism that has come to this romantic business of leadership is, to me, is required. I don't know, you may disagree, but.
So any reactions to that from any of you? Because, if you go with what Anil is suggesting is that you wait for a crisis, and out of that crisis, there will be a leader that comes out.
Not wait.
So save
there
all
are
your money.
always crises in organizations.
Okay, so first,
But do not your talented people make them avoid crises. There are people whom we say A+ and a star, and we make sure they don't handle crisis situation. We take them to a different route, a non-crisis route, because for some good reasons we feel they have leadership material.
So may I just butt in? So thank you, Leena, and God bless you and Anil for making this point. Leena was stuck in the Taj. And I, of course, was not there, but I have heard lots of stories where simple folks who were not high potential, who had never been to a leadership development program, they actually were really heroic, where there were many high pots, guys like me wearing ties, who went and hid. So the point is two. One, of course, the fact that leader is not only the CEO on his own can do zero. Right? He needs a whole battery of. So I think this whole concept of who is the leader needs to be looked at. The second bit, I totally agree that leaders are not necessarily made only by going to Harvard or Yale or wherever. And the third thing is, let us please not make gods out of people.
Right, right. Yeah, and just for the amplification of those of you that might not be aware, this Leena got stuck at the Taj during that unfortunate incident that happened when there was a terrorist attack. I used to work at the Taj. I got stuck at the Taj. That's a different way of getting stuck at the Taj. But that's a career perspective. This one was really being held hostage, you know. So there is, these are different manifestations. Just to clarify, Rajiv, right, not from a career perspective, she was stuck. Narayan, any reactions to this? Because I want to pick on you because you're the American company here, right? and the reason I'll pick is because there is this, to paraphrase what Anil was saying, this whole, romanticizing of leadership, this one guy on a white horse or one girl on a white horse will come and rescue a company, etc., has been precipitated primarily by North American companies. One of which is mine, right? But the Japanese type of leadership is less about dependency on that one individual and more a collective form of leadership and so on. Yeah. So there's good and bad in both. So what's Monsanto's and your take on this?
So let me actually illustrate it with an example, because this is something which Monsanto in India, we do today. Dina talked about the frontline sales organization, right? In our terminology, we call them territory managers. In a typical organization, these would not be people managers, just sales folks, and you review them as individual contributors. But in our case, the unique thing here is they're all very, very key leadership roles. And let me tell you why. Because these are individuals who not only interact with our pharma customers, they interact with local politicians, they interact with local bureaucrats, and have to influence the thinking of a lot of those people with respect to new technologies that are coming out in the marketplace. So which means that they have to demonstrate leadership positions in terms of what are the benefits of these technologies? Facing thousands of farmers, standing up and talking to them about what are the benefits that would accrue to Indian agriculture with some of these technologies. Even I don't have the experience of doing that, but a frontline salesperson is doing it every day. I don't see any other leadership role that provides that kind of experience. And then, sir, to talk about your analogy of experiencing through trouble situations, they live it every day. Especially in our kind of situation where some of these technologies, there is a lot of public opinion, which we, issues that we face. These people live it every day, have to present themselves convincingly, and more importantly, influence a lot of key stakeholders. So whether you're an American company or not, one of the biggest strengths of Monsanto as a company is, one, it is a team-based organization, but most importantly, it's an organization which believes in leadership by influence as opposed to leadership by structure. Because most of everything that we talked about doesn't come through the position that you occupy. It comes based on the leadership influence that you bring to teams and people. And that builds strong leaders, and also that helps people build future successes as well. So in that sense, I think I'm very proud of the culture that we have. And this is a culture consistently for us is globally, not just unique to India.
Okay, yeah. Any other reactions to this American versus Japanese type of leadership?
One of the things that has happened is certainly expectations from leaders and and styles of leadership which are most successful today have certainly changed.
Yeah.
I mean, today it's fascinating to see that leaders connect more with their people when they share their failures more than when they share their successes. So clearly the expectation that there's a leader who knows all the answers and sets direction and we sort of just follow and execute and we're just good followers has gone. Right. Today a good leader is someone who turns around and says, what do you think? Asks or solicits opinion from a group that reports to him or her. Today a good leader is far, far more authentic, shares his concerns, his anxieties, feelings, which is hard. Right. When you think about it. So I truly believe that that's good for the organization because it's creating a more inclusive place where people feel safer and better about being themselves. So I certainly see the shift towards leaders who are more authentic, more rooted in humility is happening in the workforce, and it's a great thing for us.
And in Unilever, you believe in job rotation, right?
Yes.
You believe that before people take general management type positions or significant management positions, they should have experience in multiple business streams, geographies, business units, etc. But Anil doesn't think that that's necessary.
No, let me clarify.
It's okay, sir. It's okay to disagree.
Just a minute. I believe it's a must, but an overemphasis of going to every function, I'm only talking about that. There are people who are able to, what one should measure is a turnaround and transformational capability, rather than experience in 10 functions. That is what I am talking about. And second thing I am talking about is the tough functions, tough territories. Let us say there was a time in Hindustan Lever, lots of industrial relations problems. Whether someone has soiled hands there and demonstrated a turnaround situation, he could be qualified to become chairman of Hindustan Lever without working for a Pond's brand or Surf. What I am trying to say is that an overemphasis on working in 10 functions may not necessarily be a requirement. As long as you have 2-3 functions, including 1 or 2 business functions, that is good enough. That's my view.
Yeah, please.
I'm so keen we disagree. So let me disagree a bit. Or rather,
because it's a successful model. You've been doing it for like ever, and you produce 100 CEOs.
And I think the key word is and, Anand. I do believe that in 3-4 years into a company, you can see the spark in a people. You can begin to see who's going to probably going to be the lambe race ka ghoda. You can start making those judgments, and that's a bit of the art of judging leaders. So I do believe it's an and. The job rotations, the cross-functional experiences are fantastic for building wisdom, for building crisis and adversity, understanding different contexts. But for people who have that spark, you can begin to see it early, and that gets shaped and honed. So to me, it's an and question. It's not either or. It's not that job rotations make you a better leader, or it's not that once identified leaders with absolutely no exposure will grow on. It's an and. You need to have both. And it's the same thing. I mean, he spoke about the Taj experience. I mean, seeing the 22-year-old girl Malika in the Taj with such poise, handling us and helping us towards safety. I can tell you there's no training in the world that could have taught her what to do. This circumstance would not have been in any scenario building, in any leadership training she's been through. Right. But to handle that night and ensure our safety is a huge leadership moment.
Outstanding. Yeah.
And that spark you can see.
Narayan and Rajiv, both of you want
to... I agree with what has been said. What is important is that we should not only focus on those people who are going to be groomed for the top. I think there is a danger that by focusing and only looking, if organizations do that, on the top guys or the high pots and neglecting the others and making them feel unwanted or less important, that's a real danger. And the only point I want to make is that there are all kinds of people and all kinds of roles that are required in an organization, and we must be able to respect people regardless of where they are.
Right.
So I'm not disagreeing with what has been said. I'm saying the danger is that by focusing too much on a few people and ignoring the others and by making them feel unwanted, you are actually losing out on a huge amount of potential. Because frankly, I in my own life have not found too much of a difference between those who shot to the stars and those who didn't make it. Okay, the difference was in many cases very marginal. It was the circumstances and other things that happened, which is not to deny them their competency. Right. But to make some people feel unwanted and second-rate citizens is not a good thing. That's the point I want to make.
All right.
Yeah, so this is something I will share from what we are doing, and that's slightly different, where in today's world, even if you are in functions like HR and finance, you are getting a very strong business perspective, which in itself sets you for large leadership positions. So this notion that you have to get rotated across multiple functions, I think is slowly getting blurred, because today you have people making, in our organization, moving either from finance into CEO roles, or from HR, or from manufacturing. And the biggest strength that they have is in the roles, functional roles, they contributed significantly to the business, okay? And that in itself builds some strong experiences. So this notion of, functional experience and rotation is, I think, is slowly getting shifted to how do you pick up those experiences by staying in those functions itself.
Terrific. Now I'd like to throw open the floor to the audience. If you guys have any questions to ask any one or more of our panelists, please jump up and we'll get you a mic. Sir.
Thank you. I've enjoyed the discussion immensely. I appreciate the insights and for the great paneling and emceeing that's been going on tonight. Let me just pose a question here that may be somewhat controversial. I think we all agree that developing a leadership pipeline is equivalent to having a good succession plan, and that in turn means good corporate governance. And let's say governance in a broader context, not just corporate, but governance in a holistic sense. Now, to what extent do you all believe, and I'm not sure who to address this to specifically, but to what extent is India different? I've seen statistics which say that a multinational in India versus an Indian company in India is not all that different from a governance standpoint. So is there something about the Indian DNA, and therefore is there something about the Indian leadership style that is very different or very unique versus, say, the American style or the Japanese style?
So would you mind if you identified yourself, your name and where you're from?
My name is Mahesh Krishnamurthy, Managing Director of Resources Global Professionals. We're a management consulting firm, an American company in India.
Thank you. Yeah, there are a few of us around, right? Thanks, Mr. Krishnamurthy. Let me take a first stab at that. I think in terms of succession planning and governance, promoter-led Indian companies are constantly thinking of succession, far more than any other organization. So, with that, I'll turn it over to the panel, that there is a distinction. It's not just any old Indian company versus any old multinational. It's promoter-driven Indian companies, because it's sustainability of the family, it's sustainability of the family's investment, and I think they have succession planning far better entrenched as a core competence than the quote-unquote professionally managed companies. Now, whether they pick the right successors or not, etc., is different, but the fact is that they are thinking far more about it than many other companies. Panelists, would you like to react to that? Maybe we'll start with Anil. You have a point of view on governance and overall governance differences between Indian companies and foreign companies.
Yeah, Mahesh, if I have understood your question, let me attempt to answer that. I have a very slight experience of working for multinational as chairman of a company for 3 years, and my eyes were opened about multinationals. But please do not mistake me for generalizing. There are great multinational companies. One is that multinationals operating in India, especially the kind of company I headed, I had a view that they have a view about India. One is that there is a preconceived view about India. In terms of profitability, they come prepared that 3 years we are not going to make any profit. And their governance is based on that. They are on rules, regulation, regulatory compliance, everything. But an Indian promoter or entrepreneur is in hurry to create profit. In that sense, he may have, or their company may have shortcuts to governance, which I find that multinational on one hand have no shortcut to governance, but By design, with my limited experience, I can say that there is strategies in human resources and developing people are very, very narrow. Everything comes set from there. They have a, let us say, a vice president HR whose job is defined to a particular methodology that he or she is supposed to do this much. Please don't mistake me about great organizations like the one here which has a history of 100 years in India and is known world over. I am talking of a typical multinational that they are big destinations, they want to spend lot of money, prodigal, pay high salary, perfect governance, but poor practices, poor conceptualization of business in India. That is one. Indian corporate, they really know the pulse, how India operates. To give you an example, when a multinational comes, they must necessarily hire another multinational to look for premises and end up paying. I have a personal experience, what is available for 100 rupees a square feet, they are paid 250 rupees a square feet. So, second thing, that if a talent is available, same talent for let us say 30 lakhs per annum, they are willing to pay 60 lakhs. If they will not advertise and get a talent, they will go to a world class firm to recruit who will charge them. So, there is a distinct I think difference, and one can say sometime, at least in India, we think that their basic planning is that we are not going to make profit for first 3 years, while an Indian corporate, Indian entrepreneur, his or her first thing is to make profit in first year itself. And there are issues in governance in both the models. I don't know whether I have answered, but there are plus and minus of both models. There is nothing sacrosanct about multinational.
Thanks.
That is what I want.
We'll get one more perspective and then I'd like to take up more questions. Is this flickering of the lights asking us to stop? Shut up, enough. Stop, we got to eat, we got to drink.
So
Yeah, Rajiv.
I would like to actually answer a question which you perhaps didn't ask. I think at the level of the nation, there is something that many Asian countries, especially in South Asia, have to learn from, I think, the Western world and maybe from the Far Eastern world. So I don't want to talk about companies because there are companies and companies, and of course there are countries and countries. But if you look generally, governance and standards of, and governance is how well are you structured to deliver the promise that you make. If you take that as the definition of governance, then it's about having a clarity and a robustness of processes and a review process. So if you take that as the definition of governance, certainly at the level of the nation, I think many Asian countries and definitely India, we have a long way to go.
Okay.
I actually meant it in a deeper sense from the leadership side. The inherent notion of governance in a deeper leadership, example setting context. And some of the unique attributes that our leaders in India exhibit vis-a-vis leaders in other parts of the world within a corporate environment.
Okay. Appreciate that, Mr. Krishnamurthy. Let's give a couple of other people an opportunity.
Hello.
Sir.
Good evening. I'm Yuvraj. I work for PepsiCo India. Two questions which I have in mind. In fact, for the last few weeks, these questions have been bugging one, and they are very specific. They are not general questions in terms of the issues which we are facing. First is to Mr. Dubey, basically with respect to industrial relations scenario in the country. For some time, in fact, for the last 7-8 years, I had started thinking that the things in terms of industrial relations are really stabilizing in the country. There are issues which are being handled in a much more matured manner. Rather, both sides have become very, very reasonable in terms of expectations. Suddenly, if you look at the issue which has cropped up for the last couple of months, which have been going on in Maruti in Delhi, and I think this has something to do in terms of the changing face of the employee workforce, the demands. Gone are the days when people used to have 10th pass or 12th pass workforce, which used to be always looking for their rights, and perhaps used to negotiate from the other side of the table and think that how much productivity one can get in terms of the buck what is being paid. How things have changed and what perspective needs to be built in to the leaders in today's scenario to really avoid such scenarios, at the same time be far more wiser with this type of incidents? Second is, leadership definition in terms of a good leader is one who can really create charisma, one leader who can really operate from the position of power and position of knowledge. I think that those things are also blurring a bit. And if you look at today's scenario, focus is more in terms of really being together with people, being one of the group rather than being at the top of the group with the generation next workforce which are working in the ITS companies and the young workforces. So this question to Lena in terms of specifics, that how the leadership style needs to change and how things are changing with respect to handling the new generation workforce. And the first question pertaining to the understanding the issues at the larger workforce and handling issues with a term in terms of industrial relations to be far more
Thanks. So
better.
Rajiv, do you want to take the first one?
Summary answer. We are going to spend the next 2 days in the Employers Federation of India debating this.
Yes.
But I think the time has come when we cannot take people for granted. Aspirations are changing, the level of awareness is changing, and the disparity is becoming bigger. So I think we really have to be far more sensitive about the disparities that we are creating, and the disparities are of all kinds. One big one is contract labor. There's contract labor, there's permanent labor, there's white collar, and there is blue collar. So I think we have to be very mindful of the growing disparities that are coming up in corporate India and the growing aspirations and the greater knowledge that people have that they can change the state of affairs. And those people who are going to be insensitive to that are going to have problems. I don't know what the answer is, because at the same time we have to be competitive. But I think we have to find different answers to competitiveness rather than just by controlling cost. And by cost, if we focus only on the wages that you pay to labor.
And Lena?
Yeah, I must add a little bit to what Rajiv said, because we handle 96 trade unions on a daily basis, and it's a subject of great passion for me. And of course, the rising militancy in trade unions is something that gives me a lot of concern too. But the key really is inclusive growth. If 80% of a workman's salary is going to buy food today, we will have a problem. So it is time for employers to introspect a lot more and see how inclusive are we being in this prosperity story of India. Is it really inclusive? What is happening at the lowest quintile of population, lowest quintile of people that we are employing? What's really happening? So there's a whole piece of work done, and I really put the onus on employers in a big way in setting this right. And of course the trust building, etc., that needs to be there, but fundamentally answering some questions on wage, on answering questions on how we've treated contract labor, minimum wage philosophy in so many of our progressive organizations. We really need to challenge those. But it's a full day session by itself. Please come tomorrow. Rajiv and I are both debating on this issue there. You can come and spend some time. On your second question, yes, managing a new generation in the workforce and then sometimes managing 2 or 3 or 4 different generations in the workforce at the same time is an interesting challenge of our times. And I think what's being looked at, a kind of flexibility in the way you manage people. Yeah, it's no longer about this is the only way you can rise to the top. It may be through job rotations, it may not be. So being flexible to people's growths and needs, the way they work, the number of hours they put in, being really flexible is going to be a feature of leadership styles going forward. The second is recognizing that this generation is technologically all there. I mean, if you have organizations today which say at your workplace you can't be part of Facebook or you can't be part of Twitter, you can't exist to attract that generation that you're trying to attract. So really far more flexibility, recognizing that this generation breathes, lives technology, social media, and adapting the way we work to allow them to be productive. And third, but very important, really appealing to the sense of meaning that people have. I mean, the young of today are far more conscious about saying that I'm not going to work just because I want to work and earn my daily salary. I want to work because I want to make a difference to this world. And how are we really appealing to the part of people that is saying, what's the larger purpose for what I'm here? Is it to sort of only sell soap or sell whatever I need to sell? What difference am I really making to the world? And answering that questions becomes key.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? We've got time for a couple more.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Rohit Sharma, part of Lupin Pharmaceuticals. I have a question for Mr. Dubey. Can I? Mr. Dubey, you rightly said individuals should not be encouraged to be bigger than the organization. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? I have some questions on this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Does it help in the brand value? You know, if I believe there are organizations themselves who create such people, right? It's not that they are created by themselves, it's the organization idea to create such people. And it certainly helps in brand value at times. And if at all there are such people, how do you break the ice? And at the end of the day, does it really benefit the organization to get their work done? That's my question to you.
So I think the important thing is the alignment. If there is an alignment between the purpose and the meaning that the organization and its collective leadership seeks to create, and you have an exceptional leader who comes in and sometimes sort of becomes larger than life, but his purpose and his meaning and his ability to deliver are aligned with that of the purpose, then there is really no problem. So I'm not saying for a moment that you've got to be totally conformed and bound and kept within limits and bound in chains. But it is that alignment that is critical. Now, there are many cases where individuals, by being larger than the organization, have changed the organization. So that's all right. I mean, I'm talking about things from an organizational point of view, but I'm open to the fact that you can have sometimes, you have an Abraham Lincoln, or you have a Mahatma Gandhi, or you have a Thomas Edison, or you have a Newton, and these people are much larger than whatever was there around them at that time. So I'm not talking about such exceptional people. I'm talking more about the kind that at least I encounter very often, which is the I people. And not the we people.
How do we break the ice there?
Oh, I think then you have to have in place certain other people, a countervailing power, which can make sure that an I person does not get too carried away and does not have too much power.
So questioning the motive, I think, are you larger than the organization for the sake of the organization or for yourself?
The second part to the same question, if there are people who exist, like what we are talking about, and once they leave the organization, is it a loss to the organization? Or it becomes a question of survival because the brand identity is no more there?
You know, I have never come across an organization, or I've come across very few organizations, especially if they are organizations and not something which is small, which die just because a leader goes away. Hundreds of examples can be given of great leaders who have made a huge impact, but their organizations have in fact become stronger and better because these people left behind in place processes, systems, and other people, and an institutional purpose and meaning that survived them. In fact, they are the truly great organization leaders. But yes, of course, you have individuals who have been great, who have gone up like a shooting star, and then they are gone, and then they have to depend upon other people and other organizations to take forward their idea.
If I can make a little point, I know of the time constraint. This whole leadership aspects has a lot of paucity of research, at least in India. You raised a very good question. What happens to these kind when they leave? There are organizations where people have done excellent work in 3 years. After they go, there is a time, there is a waiting time bomb to explode. How this transition takes place, good to bad, bad to good, I don't think any studies exist in India. And with hundreds and thousands of management institutions and some world class, I think India has paucity of research on leadership. It's time for academics to take a call, lest this field itself will be bombarded by Western or other Asian who do not understand the psyche and culture as to what. There is a lot of need for serious research into this area. Therefore, this whole field is very normative. The whole field of HR and leadership is, it should happen, that should happen, leader should do that, leader should do that. And there are a whole lot of advice from different set of people. I think it's a very, in some ways, a very murky situation that everyone gets away by talking about leadership. There is a need for a very thorough research base in this area, and I'm sure big corporates should come forward to finance that.
Thank you, Mr. Khandelwal. Thank you, Mr. Dubey.
On that note, given the fact that we're running out of time and most of us are hungry, at least somebody of my size clearly is, I think, what I want to do is really thank all four of you, Rajiv, Leena, Anil, and Narayan, for sharing your time and your thoughts. This was terrific. I did try and stir the pot a little, so that was all in the interest of being the moderator, okay? So no offense meant. And I want to thank you all for sitting through this evening and really appreciate giving us panelists an opportunity to talk to you all about our points of view. And the organizers, thank you very much for calling us over. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to have you all here and sharing your experiences with us. If I could please request Professor K.K. Sinha from BIMTech to please join us on stage and giving away these mementos to the panelists. Thanks, Anand. And if I could request any one of you to please spill some nuts on, similar kind of, details about his life that he shared on all of you. Spill the beans.
There's nothing. I'm very boring and uninteresting. So you're going to, Professor Sinha is going to give Dr. Khandelwal's book to him as a memento. Nice one.
May I request Professor Sinha to please present first to Anand. We'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
Our sincere thanks to D. Narayan. Our sincere thanks to Dr. Khandelwal, and he's not getting his book.
Yeah, he's signing and give it back to me.
Thank you, Leena. Our thanks to Rajiv.
I can come there, Rajiv.
No, that's fine.
Well, thank you, Professor Sinha, for joining us on stage and giving away these mementos. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the conclave. I'm sure for each one of us, this program was insightful and an enriching experience. On behalf of BIMTech, People Matters, and Aon Hewitt, we'd like to thank our associate partners, Monsanto and RupeePower.com, and our television partner, NDTV Profit, the panelists for their fantastic efforts, and all of you, a big round of applause for our wonderful audience. Before I invite you all to please join us for dinner, here's an important announcement. The presentations and the reading material, as well as the link of the NDTV Profit program, will be shared with you by email. So please ensure that you have left your business card in the registration desk. If you have not done it yet, please make sure that you do it during the dinner. You will get these links once the program has been aired on television. Well, on that note, we'd like to thank you all once again. We close this event here. The dinner and the cocktails will get started, and we request all of you to join us and have a wonderful evening ahead of you. Thank you.